Alrighty, at the end of the video for creating color palettes, I showed you how to make a screen grab and capture that little color palette and then save it. Normally what'll happen is it'll be this little file that'll be on your desktop somewhere, and that's what we're going to use. Okay, so the color tools in Illustrator have been growing over the many years that it's been around, and they're kind of complex in a lot of ways. So I'm not going to get too much into the color tools themselves because we're not really going to use them at this point in the game. But just for giggles, you have in your Windows palette, you've got the color, you have color guides, you have color themes, and you have swatches. Okay, so what I've done here is I put them all into this into that side palette all by themselves so that I can access them easily. So my color window is here, my color guide is here, which also has swatches and the color. So everything that's in this palette right here is available in these different windows. So I've organized all my color windows into one. And so then what I can do is this little double arrow hides them away. Okay, so the other one that you might be thinking about is this Adobe Color Themes. And this has some, cool tools, but they're not nearly as good as the Peloton tools. So you can pick a monochrome, or you can pick an analogous, and so on. But the problem is that they've got way too many options, you know, and it basically makes it very difficult to create. I mean, if this is an analogous color scheme, look at what can happen. It just doesn't, and there's 5 colors in an analogous color scheme. It just, there isn't the kind of control that I prefer when I'm looking for doing something precise. So those tools are there. We'll talk about them a little bit more later in the semester. For now, I just want you to use that Peloton website. It's a nice, tidy tool, does a great job. So I've got a document open right now, and this document's got, you know, the usual, you know, shapes from various, various black and white shapes. And so our goal, of course, is to make a color palette that will then apply to this particular composition. So the first thing I would suggest is, since the background can only be modified using the document setup here, you have to set the color and all that other kind of stuff there. Let's not do that, okay? The easiest thing to do is, now that we're ready to start working with color, is for any composition that you want to use, make a background rectangle and make it exactly the same size as your document, okay? And so now we want to just, maybe go back and put white in it just because everything else is black, right? So as we discussed a little earlier, this is your line, your stroke color, and we can click on that and turn the stroke off because we don't really need a stroke. And then this is our color, our foreground color, or our shape color. And if we just click on that, easiest way to make it white is to simply go up into the color window that is opened automatically as soon as I touch one of these two tools. It opens up my little color window up here, and I can just make it white. Okay, but now it's like, oh, where did all my stuff go, right? So now you go back to your pointer tool, your selection tool, the V tool. If you get used to using that little V key, it makes it easy to switch back and forth between tools if you're getting quick. And what you can do is you make sure it's selected and then right click on it. And then we have a whole, contextual menu for cool things that we can do. But in this case here, all we really want to do is we just want to send it to the back. Okay, so arrange, send to back. And that'll just send it back. And now what this allows us to do is it allows us to add color easily to the background without going through the document setup. So it's a way more interactive environment to play with, okay? So the next thing we want to do then is probably close that color window up, that color, and then let's go ahead and position that palette on in our document. So what we want to do here is we want to go to the File menu and we want to go to Place. All right, so when we hit the Place, it's going to ask us what document we want to place. And so in my case here, I've got in my color theory folder, and so wherever you put it, you should put your palette, your palette that you captured from the Peloton website, and put it in your project folder so you have it accessible. Okay, so that's what I did right here, and so I'm going to place that, and you get this sort of little place icon thing, and then you just click and it releases. So what's cool about it is that it's an object now, and it's a layer, and it's a little palette. So we can do a couple of things with this. Right away, we have some rotation or scaling options. So an easy thing to do is just rotate it around 90 degrees and then just drag it off to the side of your document. This way it's not in the way, it's not in the document itself, but you can still access it, okay? Boy, I didn't do it. Whoa, sonocular. I didn't do a very good job of rotating that. Yeah, whatever. I get jaggy stair steps there, that kind of bugs me, but whatever. So, what can you do with your color? There's a couple of things you can do. You can grab the eyedropper, and you can pick up a color, and then you can just drop it on things, or they have to be selected. Sorry. So decide what you want to do first with your color. So I'm going to just add a color to the background just so I have something, okay? So my background is selected. I use my eyedropper tool. And then when I click on any color anywhere, so I can click on the background, I can click on the red, I can click on, well, I can't click on a menu. But anywhere within the actual document window itself, I can pick up a color, okay? So I'm going to pick a dark teal color, okay? So now this is a good opportunity to go back to the V key, right? V, and that allows me to select other things because now my pointer is selected, right? And my eyedropper tool, notice that is the letter I. So it makes it real fast to kind of go back and forth. So IV, think intravenous, right? So going back to the V key, I can now select other elements, and I'm just going to select them at random here. And then I'm going to go back to my eyedropper, I, right? And then I'm going to go pick up a color. And then I've got the color placed in those things, right? So if I go back to V, I can now go in. And I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? So sometimes you just start doing something. And then I go back to my eyedropper and I'm going to pick up one of those green colors, maybe this one right here, maybe the darker one. Yeah, there we go. Go back to your V key, and then you can continue doing this, right? So this is the process that you're going to go through. And you can even do something like this, like, okay, I've got some colors going. So that's the selection tool. It's very powerful here. So say I've got this object selected right here, and I can say select. And notice that I've got same in object, right? So same appearance, same fill color, A, pretty cool, right? So everything that I haven't selected so far is now selected. And so now I can go back to my eyedropper tool, I, and then I can go in and I can pick, let's see, why don't I pick a light teal? Okay. And then go back to my V tool, V, and then just click anywhere and that will deselect everything. And then you can look at it and see what you have. And then if you decide you want to do something more or less, you can simply, again, select a variety of different elements, and then use your eyedropper tool. And I'm going to use not so dark of a teal this time. And then go to my V tool and click and see what I got. And so you can continue through this process very, very rapidly. Okay, so I've picked up a Triad from the Peloton website, and it's given me a variety of values and saturations of the three main colors that I selected out of that Peloton website. So this is a nice palette. It gives me a lot of options without mucking about trying to change things, but you still can. Say, for example, you want to make the background a little lighter, but not as light as one of the other versions, right? So you can go into the color, and here you have some options, okay? So we have RGB, HSB, CMYK, and WebSafe, okay? You get that from this little hamburger menu up here. The easier option, and if you refer to the book, I talk about the different color models that you have, and HSB is a much more intuitive color model, because now what we have is the color, the hue, the saturation, how much there is, of which there isn't much, and then the brightness, okay? So say I want to make it a little bit brighter, okay? So I can click and just drag that little thing around until I get to that point where, oh, that's cool, And what happens when you do this is that you see the way the colors begin to interact. Like that red color that I picked. Notice how it changes. And notice these colors that were very flat. Notice how they're sort of almost disappearing because of what I'm doing with this color. So these are the kinds of things that you want to explore as you start playing around with these tools. And so say you want to do the same exact thing with, say, these colors here. So now I've got all these colors that have almost disappeared. Even though they're different, they now have almost the same value and a similar saturation. And so now I can select that, and I can go back to my select, and I can say select same fill color. And now I can do the same thing. I can go in here and I can go kind of play around with those colors and kind of play around a little bit and just sort of see what happens if I start to do subtle variations and changes to them. Okay, so that's essentially the way the tools will work. And I've just done, in this period of time, I've probably done 4 studies, right? So every time you make a change, if it's enough of a change that the interaction of the color has changed, then I would say save it. And that's a study. So remember to save everything as your AI file so you can go back and edit them if you need to, and then you can batch process to JPEG when they're all said and done. Okay, so don't be saving to JPEG too soon. Okay, so that's essentially how you will progress with this project, and it's a lot of fun. So have some fun.